My name's John, and everything started when a new neighbor moved into our quiet little town. His name was Henry, and he was what you'd call an enigma. He seemed friendly enough, but there was something odd about him. He rarely left his house, and when he did, he kept to himself. People around the neighborhood talked about him, but no one really knew much. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly lady next door, swore she saw him burying something in his backyard late at night. Others just thought he was eccentric but harmless. I didn't pay much attention until I saw something myself that made me question who Henry really was. One evening, I decided to go for a walk. It was late, and the street was quiet. As I passed Henry's house, I noticed his garage door was slightly open, with a faint light spilling out. Curiosity got the better of me, so I peeked inside. Henry was standing near a large box filled with what looked like old clothes, but the smell that was the worst part. It was sharp and rotten, the kind of smell that makes your stomach churn. Pretending I hadn't seen anything, I quickly walked away, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. The next night, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. When everyone else was asleep, I crept toward Henry's backyard. As I peered over the fence, I saw him again. He was digging a hole, and next to him was a large, tied-up bag. It was too big to be anything normal. The following day, when Henry left for errands, I decided to check it out. I grabbed a shovel and dug where he'd been the night before. What I found froze me to the core. Inside the bag was a torn, old mannequin and some creepy books filled with disturbing illustrations. But the real shock came when I found a stack of photos. They were pictures of women from around town. Some worked in the local diner, others at the grocery store. I recognized a few, but most of them were unfamiliar. My heart pounded as I took photos of everything with my phone and reburied the bag. I couldn't stop asking myself, why did he have these things? And what was he planning? I couldn't keep this to myself. The next day, I went to the local police and showed them the photos. At first, they seemed skeptical, treating me like some nosy neighbor. But when they started their investigation, everything changed. It turned out 2 of the women in the photos had been reported missing years ago. The case had gone cold, but this discovery reopened it. The police got a warrant to search Henry's house, and what they found inside was even more disturbing than I imagined. Inside his basement, they found an entire hidden room. It was filled with more photos, maps of the town, and personal belongings that didn't belong to him. There were journals where he'd written about stalking these women, noting their daily routines. Henry was arrested on the spot, and as they took him away, he gave me a cold, unsettling look like he knew I was the one who'd exposed him. The neighborhood was in shock. Everyone had their theories about Henry, but no one could have guessed the truth. For weeks, it was all anyone could talk about. I couldn't sleep, knowing how close I'd been to someone so dangerous. Looking back, I'm glad I trusted my gut. If I hadn't, who knows what Henry might have done next. But even now, I can't shake the feeling that there's more to his story, more secrets buried somewhere, waiting to be uncovered. After Henry's arrest, the police kept digging literally and figuratively. They started searching his entire property, and what they found was even darker than anyone had imagined. Behind his house, buried deep in the ground, they uncovered more bags like the one I had found. Each contained odd, sinister items, women's clothing, torn photographs, personal trinkets. The police suspected these were trophies Henry kept from his victims, though some items didn't match the profiles of the known missing women. It became clear that Henry had been operating in secret for years. The journals they found in his basement documented his twisted fantasies and plans. Some of the entries dated back over a decade. Word spread fast, and soon our quiet little town was swarmed by reporters and cameras. Everyone had an opinion about Henry. Some people claimed they always knew something was off about him, while others were stunned, saying he seemed so normal. For me, the attention was overwhelming. People started calling me a hero for exposing him, but I didn't feel like one. I just felt lucky to have avoided becoming one of his targets. During interrogations, Henry eventually cracked. He admitted to following women, taking their photos, and collecting their belongings. He claimed he never meant to hurt anyone and insisted the journals were just fantasies, but the evidence said otherwise. Investigators linked him to at least 3 cold cases of missing women from nearby towns. While Henry denied involvement, his trophies and journals told a different story. I was called to testify during Henry's trial. Sitting in the courtroom, I could feel his eyes on me as I described what I had seen and found. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The prosecution built a strong case against him, using my testimony and the evidence from his home. But as the trial went on, it became clear that Henry wasn't just dangerous, he was deeply disturbed. After weeks of testimony, the jury reached a verdict guilty on multiple counts, including stalking, kidnapping, and unlawful burial of remains. Henry was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the judge announced the sentence, I finally felt like I could breathe again. Justice had been served, but it didn't erase the scars Henry left on our town or on me. Life slowly returned to normal, but things were never quite the same. Our town, once a quiet and trusting community, now felt more cautious, more guarded. As for me, I couldn't shake the memories of what I'd seen. I started volunteering with a local group that helps families of missing persons. Sharing my story and helping others became a way to heal, though I still had moments where I couldn't sleep, haunted by the thought of what might have happened if I hadn't acted. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that trusting your instincts can save lives. Henry fooled a lot of people, but there were always signs, little things that didn't quite add up. I tell everyone now, don't ignore your gut feelings, no matter how small they seem. And don't be afraid to speak up, even if you're worried about being wrong. Sometimes I walk past Henry's old house and feel a chill, remembering everything that happened. It's empty now, the yard overgrown and the windows boarded up. But for all the darkness he brought into our town, I believe we've come out stronger. We're more aware, more protective of one another. And while I'll never forget the fear and uncertainty of that time, I'm grateful for the chance to make a difference and for the reminder that even in the darkest moments, light can shine through.